Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am so excited that you are here with me for Leadership Live 2023 with Dr. Renita and friends. We are here back for another week of Leadership Live, and we have our same amazing guests from last week, but some of y'all didn't see last week, so I'll advise you. After you watch this, please know after you watch this that you go back and catch last week's segment. But oh my gosh, it's getting ready to be amazing all over again. For those of you all who are like, I'm so glad it's going to be amazing, but who are you, crazy lady? I am Dr. Renita. I'm an educational leadership strategist, and that simply means I love to work with growing and inspiring leaders to become more authentic in their leadership, empower their fellowship, and at the end of the day, have a greater impact on the world. I am also the founder of The Refining Life, a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide you with experiences so that you can lead a more positive and productive life because your mindset will be shifted. Absolutely. And just in amazing ways. I am also a wife and mother of 4. I own 2 children and I birthed 2 children. I say I own my boys because I fed them for so long. I told them that they belonged to me, but also through my wonderful marriage with my husband. And that journey inspired me to write Stepmom, Trials, Tribulations, and Triumphs, editions 1 and 2, because some stories just need to be told. And that story I felt needed to be told. And I think every single person who has ever purchased a copy of Stepmom, and please know it is still available on Amazon and on my website, drreniaweb.com. I'm also the authoress of While You Are Sleeping, the Perfect Children of All Ages book. And it was inspired by my kids. It's something special about watching your children while they're sleeping. And it gives you all kinds of thoughts and wonderings and sometimes prayers over their life. And so I'm excited to be that author. And all of that had to do with my parental leadership. Parental leadership is totally a thing. And if we lead in the way that we can in our homes, we will make a greater impact on the world because our children will be impactful and we will inspire them to do amazing things. I am a coach. I am a speaker. I'm an MC. I love to MC events. And I am the producer of shows like Leadership Live. So I'm excited to be here yet another week with my amazing guests. Now, last week we started talking about obedience and leadership, and we're going to continue that conversation tonight with the amazing, the beautiful, the fabulous LaVon Featherstone. And the crowd goes wild. And if I had a DJ, it would be playing music as you came in the room, but I don't have a DJ yet. Just wait on it. It might be coming.
Oh my goodness. That's all I have to say is, oh my goodness. Just thank you for having me back. I think this is going to be very interesting this evening.
It's always going to be interesting. One thing, and for those of you all who don't know us like that and don't know our backstory, LaVon and I met some years ago. I believe it was back in 2018 or 2019 at an event in Philadelphia. And we talked about this last week. But ever since our friendship, business partnership, relationship has grown. And so we meet on a regular basis. So our conversations are always lively. We never know where they're going to go. But, you know, our conversations on here on Leadership Live, at least, you know, we have a topic and we try to stick to it for the most part. And we will. We're into some great things, some great questions. Even after last week's conversation, we said, oh, we want to make sure we talk about some more things. And so we are going to. But I'm going to step out of the way for a second for LaVon to tell you a little bit about her. And then we shall keep the party going. Go ahead, LaVon.
Thank you again, Dr. Renita, for having me on. I am LaVon Featherstone, the 10 times author, the owner and CEO of Samars Publishing and some other companies that Dr. Renita is sure to bring up. And I'm just excited to be here again. So I'm waiting for Dr. Renita and what her topic is going to be tonight. So Dr. Renita, let's go.
Well, okay, so LaVon said that she's afraid because pre-show, I was writing down some notes, and yeah, it's a lot of things, but it's also not a lot of things. We only have a certain amount of time, but we're sticking to obedience and leadership. But one thing I wanted to make sure that I got from you was, what is your definition of obedience?
Hearing a command and following through on that command.
Wow. Okay, so the word command can be very scary. Yeah. Because I think about when people command me to do things, sometimes I just get an attitude. Who do you think you're talking to? Then you're commanding me? You better ask me that question.
Yeah.
Where do you take commands from?
So I have that same response to God, even when He gives the command. I do. Like, me? You should, like, this child? Like, you really want me to do that? I don't really think that you really want me to stubborn. Man, you look up stubborn in the dictionary, especially when it came to anything that God wanted me to do. My face right there. It's right there. It's plastered there. But I think that's the main person, the main part of me where I can take a command from. Not initially, not immediately. Sometimes, you have to get yelled at a few times before you are actually obedient. Sometimes you have to be, lack of better words, beat into obedience. Because life will beat you, right? Life will beat you when you're disobedient to what God tells you to. He will put you back in line eventually. It may not be that first time, second time, or even the 20th time. Sometimes in cases like myself, we're stubborn, but yeah. Scratch the brow? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I was saying, I have like a visceral reaction to being told what to do. But, it's this idea of having an authority that I'm choosing to listen to, right? Because we still all have free will. Mm-hmm. And I think that so for those of us who are watching and who are believers in God, and we have this kind of vertical relationship with God. And, I think about that, the idea of vertical relationships, like in my life, that is a part of my vertical, like that's the highest point in my vertical relationship, but there's still some other people I feel like who have authority over me. Mm-hmm. So like in my life, even at my whole big age, my mother is still like on that plateau of, the vertical relationship. It's like my mama, then keep going. So she's still, because I have chosen to submit to my mother, she still has some authority over my life, even though I'm at a whole big age and no, I'm not going to do all the things that she suggests because one, I'm older now. Two, sometimes she's suggesting things out of her own experience. And they are not my experience. And so sometimes I'm like, Mom, I know you think that this is best, but because I've experienced X, Y, Z, and I'm in this situation right now, I know I need to, And a lot of times it works out. It's not that I'm being disrespectful. It's just that our experiences are different. So there are parental relationships, above you. And sometimes we choose to submit to people who have positions of power above us. But for me, my ultimate is God. And I know yours is too. And sometimes I'll skip those other things in the chain because if God told me to do something, I'm sorry, it don't matter what these other folks said, but I still am under their authority. So there are some commands they put over me that I am going to listen to. Like Mama, I'm at my mama's house and she said, go wash some dishes. Even at my whole big age, I'm gonna get up and go wash some dishes, right? Because I'm not trying to have those kind of problems.
Understood.
And so when we're thinking about submission, is not submission. When we're thinking about obedience, because and I'm gonna ask about this too in just a second, but when I think about obedience, I think about submission. I'm choosing to submit to the thing that this higher authority is asking me to do or telling me to do. Because a lot of times, especially from God, it's not an ask.
Not at all.
It's a tell.
Yes.
There's quick volunteering. You're going to do this. And so in that, trying to adjust my reactions to not be jolted, it's difficult because, like you defined, obedience is getting a command, not a request, getting a command and following through with that command. I'm going to be obedient to this command, because if it's a request, then what I'm doing is fulfilling a request. That's not always submission. It's not always obedience, I don't think. And you may think, you tell me what you think about that. If somebody requests something of me, like they ask me a question, I answer it. No. That's not particularly obedience to me. Because I love the idea that you said it's a command that you follow through on. This is not a request. This is something that you've been told to do.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
That's real good. It's that difference between a request and a command.
Yes. And I see the shift in your eyes and your head and your mannerisms. So, God, I'm listening. I see it.
No, for me, that's very powerful for somebody to command you to do something. So that brings in this idea of submission. Submission to me, a person who has always been raised to be a strong, independent Black woman to go make change in this world. Mm-hmm. Don't let anybody hinder you. You can do this. You've got this. You better work. Keep marching on, sister. All of the things. Mm-hmm. And now you want me to submit?
Yes, you. Yes, you.
Why did I do
that? Yes, you.
And the thing is, for me, if it's something that is going to help me in my personal mission, fine. Let's go. But it's something about that submission that has to do with things outside of what I thought I was walking towards.
Exactly.
And so how do you feel even about the term submission?
I really never thought about that term in reference to obedience. So I really can't answer that one. That's something I would have to dig deeper into, really think about that word submission. No. Submit to God's authority over my life is basically trying to be obedient in it and submitting to Him having reign over my life. So am I really being obedient half the time if I'm not submitting to the will or the plan that He has for me? So that's why I said I'm stubborn. I'm working this out. Like, even because it trickles down, right?
Right.
When you're obedient to God, everything else will start to fall into place, right? Even if chaos is going on around you, whatever the plan is or whatever His will is, you're actually being obedient, and you have to submit yourself and your emotions to the will and the unction of God as you move forward. But we're gonna leave that alone.
But so when the will is that you submit to a earthly being and what they are commanding of you, how do you deal with that? So, and I'll give an example. So I'm married and I'm supposed to submit to my good husband. Now, please note, everybody out there, he is my favorite husband. Of all my husbands, he is my favorite. Please note, I only have one, but he is my favorite husband. And the idea of submission is I am an independent Black woman who has been raised. I was raised in a single parent household. It was me and her, and she raised me to do the thing. And then in my whole big adult age, I'm supposed to submit to another person. And so for those of you all who do not know my husband, I would like you, if you do know the words of prayer, just keep praying for him because he is married to me. And it's not an easy job. I know it was part of his calling. But his wife, and I'm going to say this out loud, and he's going to probably clap when he watches this, his wife is stubborn. But I'm also married to a stubborn man. So let's husband, don't get too excited. This is a two-sided coin here. But, stubborn people, you admit that you are stubborn, LaVon. And I think that a lot of people who are successful in business, successful in leadership are stubborn people. Very stubborn people, because if you weren't stubborn, you would not persevere in the way that you do. You would not keep marching on as you do. But because we are stubborn, but as leaders, we still have to submit to something. And a lot of times it happens to be people. The commands of the people. I'm going to submit to these commands, which once again feels really weird to say. But even thinking about your clients, without them saying a command, they're commanding certain things of you because there's certain things that they want. You have to submit and be obedient to the desires of the people who you serve, because you want to serve them in a way that can be effective for them. So you're submitting to their sometimes even unspoken commands. But you can see their commands in what they're doing and how they're living and what they need. When you're thinking about submitting to earthly beings, how does that settle with you? And how do you deal with that?
Well, it still goes back into a relationship with God because you can't just submit because someone earthly has requested of it. Because you may submit to something and it can lead you down that wrong path, right? Mm-hmm. So even if, like you brought up clients, even if they have a request or command, if it's not in line with what God is saying, is okay, we're not doing that, right? We are not doing that. I wouldn't feel comfortable with doing that because we don't know how it's going to affect us. Like in the last part of this, I said it's bigger than us, right? So if we do something out of line, it can be a trickle down, a domino effect, how it's going to affect other people. Mm-hmm. But going back to the initial thing about submission, I really think that I have an issue with that. Oh, you agree?
Well, I'm agreeing because I'm recognizing my own issue with it.
Yeah, I'm just messing with you.
This is the connection point. As my former school counselor, when I was a principal, she said we would do this in meetings. That me too. I agree. Me too.
Yes, I don't think that I have an issue with that. Like even you brought up your mom and asking for things. I joke with my mom so much about things. I'd be like, "You want me to do what? And how? This child?" We gotta have to think about that one. I'll eventually do it, but it's like a processing thing, right?
Right.
Like, especially like you said, at being our age, even though I'm gonna kind of slide this in, I'm the younger sister over here. I have to. You already know, but I think I really do have. I have to work on that. I have to pray about that. I know that my pastor and my sister friends are going to watch this and just agree some more about that, even to the point of obedience. They're gonna be like, she's obedient. What I said, it takes me a little bit of time. Okay.
So here's a thought. So because of stubbornness, because we're both admitting to have, even if it's probably an upbringing or just what we believe or what society has put on us in our experiences, we have issues with the idea of submission, even though we know it's necessary.
Yes.
But then also listening to you talk, there's also this idea of delayed obedience.
It's disobedience. Right? My pastor always says that, like, delayed obedience is disobedience all day. All day. Is this disobedient? Think about it as a child. Your mom or your parent tells you to do something and you don't do it because you're processing it. No, they say do it now. Not 5 minutes from now. But even going back to the stubbornness, I believe that stubbornness saves my life. Because it pushes me not to get into things that happen in life. Like, even if you have a moment, you don't give in because you're like, I'm going to get past this. I'm going to get through this. So stubbornness is kind of like a fuel. It may not necessarily be a good thing in other people's eyes, but it's been my fuel to be able to keep on going forward, to be able to push through things outside of business, outside of even, relationships. It's just about for yourself, right? If you give into all the stresses of life, or even illnesses, or even loss, or even just environmental issues, like the atmosphere that you are in, you will not get through. So stubbornness has saved my life.
But you know what, that makes me think about, so we think about stubbornness as a characteristic in persons, in people, but I think the way you're describing it is taking that characteristic and using it as a tool. Yeah. Using stubbornness as a tool to help you to do other things. Because I'm so stubborn, no, you told me I can't write this book in 30 days. Oh, it will be written. Don't worry. Because I'm stubborn and I like to prove people wrong. Watch it happen. But it's about knowing how to use the tools in your toolbox and acknowledging that as a tool. Like, I think some people today are probably having this aha moment of, oh, I'm stubborn. And, the word stubborn is never looked in a favorable light. Never. We're always stubborn as a mule, just being crazy. no, I'm stubborn, and so I'm going to get things done. My stubbornness is can be a positive trait because I've learned how to use it properly.
Yes.
And I think that that's where some of us get hung up. And I say us because I am a part of the family of stubborn. Some of us get stuck because we get this tool. So let's just have a moment where we think about stubbornness as a gift. Stubbornness is a gift if you choose to learn to use it properly.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes you have to use it against yourself, right? Because that self-doubt that, yes, I can, no, you can't. Sometimes you have to be stubborn with yourself.
Yeah.
For example, we spoke about, having these long entrepreneurial evenings and these early mornings, and the bed and the pillow looks so comfortable. So comfortable. Like, it's nice and toasty. Like, why do I want to get up? Is one side saying, nah, we're just going to rest here. Just, the other side, like, if you don't get your behind up and do what needs to be done, so you can do what you want to do, which is get back in this bed, then you have to do what you have to do what you're supposed to do before you can do what you want to do. So,
right. And so that's using your own powers for good and not evil.
Yes.
So stubbornness can be a superpower.
Thank you. Did everyone hear that? Did everyone hear that? Everyone who has said something about me being stubborn. You heard it here today on Dr. Renita's Leadership Live. That stubbornness is a superpower.
Okay, so
when I wear S on my chest, it's not before being super. You maybe just stubborn that day.
Okay,
we haven't got the S to be submitted yet. The S don't stand for submission yet, but we got. There we go. Thank you, Dr. Renita.
You're welcome. But now, for those same people who are listening who know LaVon, let us remember that villains have superpowers as well. So if she has chosen to take this superpower and use it for not good, it is still a superpower, but it may be used in a super bad way. So let us remember that stubbornness can be a superpower, but it should be chosen to be used for good and not evil. Hallelujah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We didn't need a disclaimer afterwards. We could have kept going with me having it as a superpower.
Oh, no. We needed it. We need this thing. For every Professor X, there's a Magneto.
So,
and there's a Thanos. Like, we needed it.
So I think we should leave that topic alone. We're going to leave that part alone. I'm just going to rock out with what you said, that it was a superpower, and I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah, but everybody else heard me. I hope you did. I hope you heard me. So we'll move on. We're going to move on. But that was a great thought in using our stubbornness in a positive way for good and not for evil. So I'll say this. So here's a question. So we think about our stubbornness. We think about things that we want in life. We think about all these visions and gifts we've been given. We think about all these words that we've heard from vertical and horizontal. And there's certain things that we desire in life, certain things that we know we've been called to do. So we start hearing things everywhere, and we know what we want, our flesh wants. How do you discern in the cloud of all these words, all these desires, all these feelings? How do you then discern what you need to be listening to from what you hear? Because you hear vertically and horizontally, to choose what to be obedient to.
You have to get quiet, right? Because you sometimes you can't not hear a clear voice in a crowded room. And I'm not trying to have a crowded mind. And therefore, I don't listen to a lot of people, right? Remember phrase that. I don't hear a lot of people. I said it backwards. I said it right the first time. I hear a lot of people, but I don't listen to a lot of people. Right? So everyone can be in the midst of a crowd, you can say 5,000 times that LaVon is supposed to be a gymnast. We know that LaVon does not have the balance to walk on that beam, to do a cartwheel or anything like that. but you already know I'm silly with it. But seriously, you have to get quiet, right? And even not just from hearing the voices of others, and I go back to hearing the voices of yourself, right? Oh, I need to go to the supermarket. I need to do blah blah blah. But God is tapping you and saying, I need to talk to you. You shouldn't be doing that today. Oh, I got to do this for this, that, and the third. Go back to the client thing. The client wants this, that, and third. You're not doing that. I didn't. That's not part of this plan. This is not why I connected you to him or her to be able to do anything. So you have to get quiet, and I will get quiet. I will stop talking to people. I will do radio silence, and you know that I will do radio silence to be able to process it, because if you're hearing so many voices, you start to internalize that, and it becomes more of a stressor, and you keep on going on and you keep on hearing voices. And if you're not able to hear it clearly, that weight of trying to figure out who you should be listening to starts to be high blood pressure, a headache, fatigue, and you just woke up, but you spoke to 5,000 different people, and all these voices you're trying to process. And it's not only just in reference to business. You can't take in all of those things, right? Because you may hear someone sharing their story or what they're doing in life, and you take that on like, maybe I should have, and those voices of doubt, insecurities, trying to measure up or to compare yourself to people as you move forward. All those different things can become a factor. So I get quiet. Mm-hmm. I get quiet, and I may still hear God's voice on the initial command, but I may have that, we're not gonna say disobedience, that delayed obedience, right?
You personally define as disobedience, but hey, let's keep going.
No, my pastor said delayed obedience is disobedience. So.
Same difference, as my mother would say. But I think, choosing to be quiet and not intake everything is huge. But I think also that means that we have a responsibility as people, specifically as leaders, to make sure we're not one of those voices that's leading people astray. Sometimes we get things that come in our minds, but it doesn't necessarily mean we need to say it out loud. I think we don't take enough pauses in life. Yeah. Because we love, especially as leaders, we love to be a voice in somebody's life. We love for people to hear us. We love to, we don't have a problem being in that moment where we're going to speak. But sometimes you need to shut up. Everything that comes to your head does not need to come out of your mouth, because everything that comes to your head is not particularly a good thing, and it's not always ready to be dispersed. Sometimes we have an initial thought and we'll disperse it in a moment, and then we end up severing relationships. We break business ties. Sometimes we literally are killing people because we don't take a moment to pause and process the things that came to our brains, because it came from our flesh. It didn't come from any, vertical authority. Yeah. And so we are now ruining things because we chose not to pause. And so we become a voice, a sound in people's life that can be a part of this cloud that can eventually become a tornado of things and destroy. So I think that there is an idea of even obedience to the pause. Yeah. Are you going to be obedient to the pause, both in your speaking and in your listening? And to hear you say, okay, you know what? When I need to know that I know that I know, I get quiet. I give radio silence. Nobody will know where I am. Anybody talk to LaVon? Girl, I ain't talked to her. She okay? I hope so, because she's not answering a voicemail. She didn't answer my email. I text her. I heard nothing. But it could be those moments where you're saying, I need to be silent. I need to stop. I need to pause. I'm going to be obedient to the silence. I'm going to be obedient to the pause, because now is a time, it's a shift.
It is. And it's also a buildup, right? Mm-hmm. In that quiet time, you don't know, with the quiet from the world, you don't know what God is preparing you for, right? Or strengthening you for. Because in the last part one, we spoke about me being obedient and taking a trip to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
If I would not have paused, that was a pause situation, right? Pause in life, pause in everything, to go somewhere where it was more quiet for me to be able to hear clearly. I would not have had the strength of God within me if I would not have paused from the world and took that time to spend with Him to be able to deal with the loss of my father. So, and even on the flip side, we have to even take the pause to know when to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, that quick thing, like, oh, it's time to speak up about this thing, because being quiet and not saying the wrong things, but being quiet and not saying anything at all. We can't be effective leaders if we're always quiet and not saying the things, especially like we said earlier, if you're working with someone or even leading someone in something. If you're not listening and you know that they about to walk outside, why are you laughing?
Because I already this is about to be a scenario. I'm ready.
I see. I'm gonna behave, but just walk outside and I'm leaving it alone. Never mind. Yeah, walk outside into danger. We're just gonna say danger. We're just gonna say danger because last week we spoke about the snow boot and the flip flop. So I'm not being because I thought you was ready for the whole image of.
I was prepared.
Because you really thought about that flip flop and that snow boot last week. Yeah. But no, but seriously, I really go back to the class, the cohort with you about leadership. I had to dig deep, and I still, like I said, I still struggle with saying that I'm a leader, right? Even though you will argue me down in reference to this, but I still struggle with saying that I'm a leader, because the same thing I just said a few moments ago about having the ability to speak up is one of the things that I always struggled with. Like, even though, once again, people on here may say that I didn't, but in certain areas when I needed to speak up and to actually walk into obedience, what God wanted me to do, or as you said earlier, that S word, submit to His will. It gets a little bit difficult, and I would never tell anyone who is seeking a role of leadership, right? I didn't seek after this. This was something that I sought after, like, I want to be a leader. No, not at all. Let me just go hide over here and just say hi to everybody. You need help with something? Let me help you with this. But don't mention my name. So we already know that story, but we're not going to take you there. As y'all can see, if anything, we will laugh.
Oh, yes.
In our conversations.
Absolutely. But I mean, so learning to get quiet and learning when to speak, I mean, that's huge. And also, in your case, and I think not just you, I'm sure there are lots of leaders out there who were, I won't say unwilling, but not seeking leadership. And they were still called to leadership. It can be scary to choose to talk because sometimes you don't even want to use your voice. But even in that, it's obedience and submission to what you needed to say and the way you needed to walk and the way you needed to present, because people needed you to show up so that they could be, period. As we're rounding out our time today, I do want to think about the idea of monetizing obedience. Monetizing obedience. So if especially marketplace ministry folks or marketplace leaders, we sometimes get in this place where, and it's difficult, because how do I ask you to pay me to do the things that I've been called to do? Like I have a certain anointing over my life. Like we were looking at, so when I typed up the link today, it said OIL. so it's obedience and leadership. That's the title for, the topic we were talking about. So I wrote that down. And LaVon said, what were you talking about? Oil. What are you talking about? So, so that makes me think of people who will have anointing, the oil is on them. And for those of you all who are not Christian believers, oil in a lot of religions has a place. But in our belief, we talk about the oil and we talk about anointing, the anointing on people's life, the oil on people's life. So you have this anointing, you have this call. It's what you've been called to do, and then you're asking people to pay you for it. How do you feel about that? And how did you get to the place of your thought about it?
Well, I guess that kind of brings up to something else that someone said to me. Your gifts will make way for you, right? And God doesn't want me to lack, right? So I just equate that to that. But it's a matter of, you can never do it at the value of what God has poured into you, right? You can never ask someone to pay for that gift per se, but you are paying for my, how can I say this? Willingness to be obedient, right? So just like any other job that you would compensate someone for, it may be my gift and I may have a higher level of talent in it, is because God has not groomed me, but groomed me for this particular role, same way that education grooms a doctor. I put my time in just as well as those have been educated. So, and I think that I still struggle with putting a price on those things. That's why she's smiling. I still struggle with putting a price on those things. But you also have to take that time and pause, right? Just because you're able to do it, you're not supposed to allow someone, for lack of better words, pimp that out, right?
Right. No.
Right.
I never thought of a better word.
To be able to pimp that out. And that's that quiet time. God, how should I move forward with this? Right. And a lot of people are watching this, for many years, I would help with a million things and I would charge a penny. If that, right? And we know that's not an exaggeration when we talk, we worked on some things together and you have gotten on me about actually, being able to, put a price to it, because I struggled with that for so long. But was I doing it because I didn't want to hurt them? And I was hurting myself. Right. So I was putting myself in that martyr situation. I was, in a sense, pimping myself out, thinking that, well, God gave it to me, so I can't charge them so much because it's not even me. I said this in the last interview. I'm not that smart. Right? I'm not that smart, right? I'm not that creative on my own.
Right.
So how do you work that out? And I think it goes back to being obedient to it, because even if you're giving back, right? And most of the time, even you as a leader, even if they pay us for us, we still are giving them more than what they paid for. Right? And we don't do it, for how can I say this? We're not a cattle leadership or cattle businesses where we just want people in, out, in, out, in, out. We are being led to have these relationships. We don't just have clients. We build relationships through what we're doing. We're not just doing it for the money. So I think that when we do charge for it, it's to the point of, we're not only charging them financially, but it's a charge on us to be obedient for what God is. So even though we charging y'all, we already been charged. Right? Because obedience, putting down that stubbornness, submitting, That's a charge.
That is a charge. That's a hefty charge.
It costs a lot to lead. Let me tell y'all. It costs a lot to lead on different levels. It costs a lot to lead. From
Yes.
relationships, from time, from lack of sleep, from emotion. Because you think about it, even in leadership, you get tied sometimes emotionally to the product, the project, the client, the situation throughout time. So it does cost. It is a charge. But if we're walking in obedience and leadership and see him say that, man. I keep saying that word so I get it, y'all. Being submissive in this process. See, after this, I'm gonna have to go sit down and pray and say, Lord, why you have her say that word? But anyway, but it does take a lot. So I would really have to say that I'm still praying on putting a price on the situation or the gift or the things that God has put in me to be able to share with the people. I still struggle with that. But I do have an issue when people say that we shouldn't charge for a gift. So how do you feel about the gift of the designer that designed that shirt that you put on? Right. Should they have just given you that shirt? They had to design it. They had to get the material. Okay. So, yeah. You want me to teach you how to do this, but it's still a form of material in a sense, right? Because you have to take that stuff. So, if everything is free.
If everything is free and nothing is free at the same time, how does that work? But I mean, I think that's a thought. There are some people who have the belief that you should not monetize your obedience. You're just being obedient. Why do you have to charge for that? Because we live in a world where things cost. Things cost. And my yes is not free. It wasn't free for me. It's not going to be free for you. But I'm also not charging you. And I love the idea of you saying this. I am not charging you nearly what it cost. I'm charging you a mere fraction because this gift, this obedience is priceless. And I'm not charging you a tenth. This is not even a tithe, not a tenth of what it cost. But I am going to charge you something so that I can continue to be able to live in a way where my gift can flourish, so that I can continue to work on my craft, so that I can continue to choose to be a vessel and not a struggle way if possible. And sometimes the struggle is saying the yes, but at least I can have a roof over my head. I'm not struggling for basics. I'm not struggling for food, clothing, and shelter, because I'm obedient enough to say, yes, I have to charge you for this. But I'm also obedient enough to not only do what the thing that you think that you're getting, but you're going to get above and beyond. You're going to get above and beyond because I'm obedient to my yes, but I'm also obedient to understanding that I have to continue to live, that I was, bought here to be the head and not the tail, to be a lender and not a borrower. There's certain things that have to be in place so that I can fulfill that part of the story. And so I can help you also fulfill that part of the story. This is not just about me. We're all interconnected. And if I do well, you can do well. And if you can do well, so can the next person. And we can continue to teach and keep this cycle of positivity and prosperity happening. But it has to be something that we all feed into. We have to be obedient to it. And sometimes that costs monetarily, but it also costs in so many other ways. Obedience is not free. Obedience is hard. Obedience is tough. Obedience can be for the stubborn if we use it in the right way. Obedience is for the submissive, but submission is powerful. Submission is powerful because it takes a strong person to submit. But all of it goes into the idea of obedience. And if we're obedient in leadership, of our own lives and the lives of others that we have been so fortunate to have in our fellowship, then we will change the world in a way that could positively keep us going forward for a long time to come. For a long time to come.
Wow, where do I need to send my offering after all that? That was the whole benediction for the whole interview. Like, I feel like it's nothing else for me to say. Did y'all hear what she said? And all that she has said to be able to, yeah, that's it. I'm done. You're done with the questions? Because I don't know what else to say after that.
No, we're done with questions. But, once again, just being a vessel. And I am so excited because I think this is a conversation that needed to be had probably a long time ago for a lot of people. And I hope that those who are watching and listening, that you take this conversation and these ideas and you use them to prepare for it so positively. LaVon, I thank you so much for being here, not 1 week, but 2 weeks, and talking about a subject that's really tough for both of us, and I'm sure for so many people. Yeah. LaVon, if they want to get in contact with you in one of your 9,762 businesses that you run, I mean, she is a publisher. She does merchandise. She works with clients who are working on their businesses. She does so many things. Like, seriously, LaVon has a bunch of businesses, and she has 10 books. If they want to connect with you, LaVon, how can they do that?
They can just go to samajpublishing.com and connect with all those businesses that Dr. Renita mentioned and all of the titles and everything. And you can just find me there.
So Samaj is spelled SEMAJ.
Publishing.com.
Okay, just make sure. I'm sorry, I spelled it right. Yes, samajpublishing.com. Go visit LaVon's site. Check her out. As real as you saw her here is how she is all the time. And know that you are loved. And my hope is that every single person watching will always keep your leadership live, all the way live. And know that I love you. I believe LaVon loves you. And there's some great things coming in your life. If you'll just be obedient to the right voices and the right commands, then you can make a positive impact on this world in a way that could change the world. So I love you all. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.